as Deputy General Secretary, Secretary General of the SACP. And my final, penultimate question for you. Is your support of the President unconditional? What if he takes this to court and is found wanting himself?
Well, it's a principled support. It's not conditional. It's an unconditional support. Obviously, as we said earlier, we'll abide by the verdict of the courts, which are the final arbiters on matters of social contradictions. So, in that regard, the bottom line is to affirm our support in this case because we think he's been targeted.
Even if the courts say he violated the Constitution?
Well, when the court comes to that particular conclusion, it takes a different posture. But what is important is to assert the fact that at the moment, we really feel that he's been disowned or disabled to actively lead the campaign against corruption.
You repeated that today, saying that the fight back is in danger. You also spoke about the danger of factionalism in South Africa and the danger of fascism. Explain what you were saying during that hands-off democracy campaign.
Well, fascism, we have seen it rearing its head. It was literally led by a man called Mussolini of Italy, as well as his counterpart in Germany, Hitler, who followed Nazism. Almost same thing. What it's characterized by, it's racial abuse, suppression of views, where people or individuals or organizations think that their views are the sole views and no others. And anyone who expresses different opinions, they are intimidated, they are heckled, they are rounded up, like we've seen with journalists and everybody else.
Were you talking about the EFF?
Yes, I was explaining clearly, highlighting this conduct by the EFF that is bordering on fascism.
All right. Thank you for your time this evening, Solima Paila from the SACP. Thank you for being with us. And let's go now to the SABC's own reporter, Patricia Visagie, has been on the ground at the Union Buildings covering this media briefing called by the President tonight. Patricia, so it's turning out to be a big news evening for a Sunday.
Well, certainly, I think with that from the President, it becomes really clear that the battle lines are now drawn, perhaps in stone between the President, of course, Cyril Ramaphosa, and Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane. Him making very strong points there, saying that he does not agree with her, and I think him even going as far as saying, but she violated the Public Protectors Provisions Act, saying that she acted in an unconstitutional manner. And in the interest of justice, fairness, and I think judicial prudence, he is now roping in the justice system, and he is saying, let the courts of the country decide what is factually correct within the bound of the law, what is constitutionally prudent and binding, and what is not. So we'll have to see what exactly will pan out as this matter from now on, of course, will be before the courts.
This press conference was called hours ago. Obviously, you were there earlier with journalists, not only from South Africa, but from across the world. Was there a lot of speculation before? Was this expected?
Well, certainly there was a lot of talks among the media that was here. Of course, we were here 2 hours before the actual briefing started at around 6 o'clock. So you can imagine all the conversations that went on among the journalists talking. But I think essentially we all expected that he would actually call for a judicial review and rope in the courts to look at this matter. And Francis, this really, if you think of his submissions that he actually submitted to the public protector before her findings, and that is a while ago, where he actually submitted a report. And already there, it was clear that he is not agreeing with her, saying, but her findings are flawed, and him highlighting in that report, but he didn't know about the 500,000 rands that was donated towards his campaign, and again reiterating but he had a meeting with his campaign managers, making it very clear that he doesn't want to know about the funds that would, of course, be directed towards his campaign, and he also does not want to know the donors. And today he came out very strongly defending that very same point, saying that he bared no knowledge and that his version in Parliament is still truthful. He gave an account of what he knew about. So he didn't know about the money that was actually donated by the former Busasa boss, Gavin Watson, saying that her findings are flawed, in particular going as far as the money laundering aspect, saying that is completely out of her scope. It is not within her mandate, her powers and her jurisdiction to actually even go that far. You would know that, of course, she has roped in the NPA to probe whether his campaign and his foundation was used for money laundering purposes. Francis?
He didn't want to respond to the question about whether or not she was malicious against him. And he said he respected even the person that occupies this office. Just tell us how he tried to find that balance of criticizing her report, but saying she's at the helm of a very important institution.
Well, a lot of diplomacy, rather, that came in there. And I think if you know the demeanor of the president, that is perhaps something that one would expect coming from him, how he would actually handle that matter, saying, but it is in the interest of justice. He respects all Chapter 9 institutions and all other institutions within the bound of the law. It's not about her. He is not targeting her, but he wants to do the right thing. Again, they are trying to dodge that question where, of course, journalists are trying to find out whether he is also perhaps, suspecting whether she is involved in, political, factional battles that are playing out in the country currently. And he didn't want to get into that, saying it is about the rule of law. It is about the country's constitution. Did she act within the constitution? Are her findings constitutionally binding, or is she completely out of the scope of law? And as I said, one would have expected him to actually, go the diplomacy route on a sensitive matter like this. But he highlighted in the beginning that her findings are of serious nature, in particular if you take into consideration that her findings are against a sitting president. And of course, her findings have serious consequences. In particular, if you look at her remedial actions, she is roping in all three arms of accountability, being Parliament, the NPA, and of course the police, to really probe what is happening here, and Parliament to also hold him accountable. But him saying that he did nothing wrong, he doesn't understand why is she taking this action. And perhaps by him saying he did nothing wrong, one has to ask, if you take into consideration all the accusations that have been leveled against the public protector, and all that has been raised that she may not have acted in a credible and manner that reflects integrity, and not just about this particular report, but also reflecting back to other cases that she has handled in recent months, then the question does remain, is the public protector perhaps involved in factional politics? Is she being used as a political weapon to further the interests of certain influential, high-profile and prominent politicians in the country? And I think that really goes to the heart of the matter. And it is on the basis of that where I think it is necessary and why the president sees it fit for the courts and the country's judicial system to really scrutinize her findings and find out what is really happening there. Francis?
You've raised an important issue. The NPA has been roped into this, and Parliament also has to act on her remedial action. Did the presidency outline what happens now that this report is going on judicial review? Is all of that action on hold, or should there still be steps taken while that court process is undertaken?
Of course, I think that would be a matter that would be decided by the courts. For the president to make that announcement, I don't think it falls within his scope. But he has also encouraged that all the organs of the law to, of course, give their full cooperation and do what needs to be done. And that means that if the NPA perhaps feel fit to go ahead and implement her remedial actions and go ahead with their investigations into, in particular, the aspect of the money laundering possibilities that may have occurred, then they will do so unless, of course, if the courts, make a pronouncement that while the judicial review is underway, then, of course, the other processes need to, be put on hold until a final conclusion is made, and therefore, and I think perhaps that would be the crux of the matter, that these other three elements cannot really go ahead unless we know what the judicial review outcome would be, because that would actually determine the way forward. That would give the NPA an indication of whether the findings that, of course, determined the remedial actions were actually constitutionally binding, and that would actually empower the NPA to then constitute a full probe into the money laundering aspect. And, of course, the police would then have to also take their steps into the former Busasa boss, Gavin Watson, for her remedial action, saying that he lied under oath, and she wants the National Police Commissioner to actually take action against him. So I think all of these three bodies, Parliament, the NPA, and of course the police, they are, of course, I think, waiting for to see what the court process will be indicating, and that is what will set the tone in terms of in which direction this matter will be going. Is the president guilty? Is the president not guilty? Or has the public protector acted out of her scope? And that will also then open up another can of worms. If she did act outside of her scope, then I think it goes to the heart of the matter. Why? And is this a political football that is at play here?
All right, here on The Full View, we continue to bring you reaction to the president's announcement tonight. We'll speak to the EFF shortly. But Patricia, before you go, final question. This is about the president's truthfulness, about his credibility, remembering that it's been found that he deliberately misled Parliament. This is about reputation as well, and bringing South Africa into his confidence. Do you think he did that tonight? Did the journalists there feel that they had a chance to ask any questions, that the president was there for them tonight and there for the South African public?
I think the general feel from the members of the media that were here was that he gave, enough information, but there, of course, will always be split views, different views. Some actually felt that the briefing was unnecessary. He basically reiterated was that which was already in the public domain, that was already stated in the report that he submitted to the public protector, and most importantly, some even saying, but what what the president came to say is exactly what was stated even on Friday when his spokesperson reacted immediately after the public protector tabled her report and briefed the media. So some were saying that it was needed for him to actually come out as head of state and deal with this matter, as it is a very sensitive and yet serious matter. And him also going there, reiterating that he has been getting calls from all over, from ordinary South Africans, influential figures and other leaders who want to know but what is happening, and asking him about what he stands accused of, and him highlighting that the public protector's findings are very serious.
Okay.
And it is on that backdrop that he deemed it necessary to come and speak to the nation and actually give his account and then rope in the courts for them to intervene in this matter. So it really was mixed reactions from everybody, but the general feel was that I think it was needed.
All right, thank you very much, Patricia Visagie, on the ground at the Union Buildings. For more political reaction, we're joined by the EFF. In fact, I understand we've just lost the national spokesperson, Mkhwebane Ndlovu. We will get him back on the line. Of course, the EFF generally supporting the public protector and saying that the president has to account for what has happened. We'll take a short break and we'll see if we can get the EFF back on the line. All right, before we take that break, a quick recap of what has happened tonight. So basically the president saying that he will, and this was somewhat expected, he will be taking that report from the public protector on judicial review. The public protector found that he violated the constitution and he violated the executive ethics code. He deliberately misled Parliament about a R500,000 donation. And going back, you'll recall that first the president said that was money legitimately paid by the very controversial company Bosasa, implicated in corruption. He said that was for legitimate work done by his son Andile, and he was paid for that. He then came back to Parliament and admitted that he was mistaken and that was a campaign donation to his presidential campaign, CR17, for the ANC presidency. He said that he didn't know about those fundings, reiterating that tonight, saying that he wasn't aware of the detail of funding. Yes, he went to fundraisers, he outlined what the priorities were, but he was told by his campaign managers that they would deal with the minutiae and he didn't have to worry about the funds. All right, I believe that we have the EFF national spokesperson, Mkhwebane Ndlovu, on the line for us. Thank you for being with us, Mkhwebane. Your reaction to the president's announcement?
Well, good evening to the listeners, but I'm not in Ndlovu.
Sorry about that.
Good. Well, we're calling on the President of the Republic to take a leave of absence whilst he is subjecting the Public Protector's report to a review. He is conflicted in this matter and must allow the process to go without him being at the helm of all institutions of the country as the Constitution prescribes. We find it very hard to accept the explanation that hundreds of millions of rands could have been raised in his name and for him in places where he would have participated to raise those funds, and he didn't know about those funds. We find it hard to believe that he must have known and declared, complied with the law as a member of Parliament firstly, but also as a member of the executive at the time. So we don't accept this, and in our view, we can't have a sitting state president or a sitting head of state who has a conflict, who enters in a direct conflict with a Chapter 9 institution and still wants to think he can combat corruption at the level of national as well as far down to the local state. It doesn't work. Ramaphosa must take a leave of absence and allow someone else with integrity to lead until his name has been cleared.
A leave of absence, but you're saying that he blatantly lied to South Africans tonight. Am I correct in saying that?
We find it hard to take the explanation, as I said, that he didn't know and he was not aware that the amounts of money that were being raised had reached a point where, according to the law, he's supposed to declare.
Is your support of the public protector unconditional? I asked this of the SACP earlier. Is their support of the president unconditional? If this goes on judicial review and a court actually says the president's explanation is logical and reasonable, will you back down?
No. The point of the matter is, it doesn't matter what the court is going to say. At the moment, there is remedial action of the public protector. Somebody who has a problem with that takes a court review, that's okay. Our point is very simple. We don't have to support or not support the public protector. The law has to take its course. What is the law? One, the law says the remedial action of the public protector are binding. A mere court review does not set them aside. That is the law. Secondly, if you knew and participated in raising money to campaign, and at the point at which you did, he himself donated more than 33 million. So as soon as you knew that there is money that is being raised in your name, you have a constitutional responsibility as a public representative to declare, to keep watch and declare. He failed to do that in his own confession. It's not even a matter of the public protector here. In his own way, he says that he was not aware, but he was aware that there was money that is being raised in his name. As soon as you are aware that there's money being raised in your name for you, you have a constitutional obligation as a sitting member of parliament, one, two, as a member of the executive, to make sure that as soon as it reaches the level at which it has to be declared, it is declared. So he didn't do that. As far as we are concerned, this guy is in direct conflict with the Constitution by his own way. Leave the public protector by his own confession.
This wasn't public funds, though. He said that he was on the campaign trail, that his campaign managers were dealing with a lot of the money coming in.
He himself doesn't believe that. You're not going to get any different answer in relation to that question. You are aware that money is being raised for you, one. Two, you go and participate in fundraising activities for yourself. How could you not, at that moment, do your constitutional duty to make sure that as soon as you are given that money, you declare it? How could you not do that?
So he should have known about each and every campaign donation. That's what you're saying?
Because he was part of it. That's what when we take an oath of office, we are told that when we are being donated to, when we are given money, these are the laws. So if you are a responsible, caring, a person who has taken an oath, who has sworn to protect the Constitution, you have to know. If you say you didn't know, then you must accept that you have failed and accept the consequences thereof.
Mr. Ndlozi, can we move to something else? I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond to some serious claims that were made today by the SACP. Solly Mapayile was with us in studio earlier talking about the public protector, saying that there's a pack of dogs fighting against Pravin Gordhan and everybody who's fighting against corruption in this country. He also said that the EFF is against Pravin Gordhan, for example, because the real constitutional delinquent is EFF leader Julius Malema. Your response to that?
The public protector has made substantial findings against Mr. Gordhan on 2 occasions. And those can only be set aside by a court of law, not by Solly Mapayile. It doesn't matter what he says. He is not a member of parliament. His party is not in parliament. He is also not, a court of law. It doesn't matter. There are findings against Mr. Pravin Gordhan. The law must take its course. What does the law say? The remedial action of the public protector are binding. A mere court application for review does not set them aside. And therefore, Ramaphosa, Parliament, and Gordhan must comply with the remedial action of the public protector. End of story.
If the matter does go through the courts and the Public Protector's report on Minister Pravin Gordhan is overturned, we have seen some of her reports being overturned, will he again enjoy the confidence of the EFF?
Until that time, as I said, the president of the EFF in fact said this in Parliament, that Gordhan is appointable anytime. He's appointable anytime. But the law must take its course. The rule of law is what is important here. And by the way, let me tell you now without a shadow of doubt, there's no court of law that is going to find that there was no rogue unit. 1, 2, that such a rogue unit existed legally. 3, that it did not engage in illegal activities. Those are facts. Those are facts. We having been the complainants in the case, are in possession and submitted it to the Public Protector of hardcore evidence, including of people who worked in that rogue unit who were engaged in legal actions. So there's no court that is going to overturn the substance of that report. I can tell you now without a shadow of doubt. But let the court do that. But what is the immediate rule of law requirement is that the remedial action of the Public Protector must be implemented, because an application for a court review does not set aside the remedial action. If you believe in the rule of law, if you believe in the Constitution, you are going to defend, particularly in the case of Pravin Gordhan, what the remedial action of the Public Protector says.
And what about in the case of the President? There's remedial action. The Public Protector wants the National Prosecuting Authority to get onto this and Parliament to get onto this. Do you think that should happen in the interim?
Absolutely. We will be working very hard as the EFF to make sure that that happens. The Hawks must investigate the suspicion, the money laundering claims. And the issue of a court review does not affect that, by the way. A mere suspicion of money laundering is enough grounds for the Hawks to go and investigate that there was money, if there was money laundering in relation to the CR17 campaign. Finally, the most important thing we hope is that CR17 campaign will be paying the legal cost for that review and not taxpayers' money. Hopefully, Ramaphosa, the announcement today, part of what he should have.
All right. We did get a lot of info out of him. That was a response from the EFF, from the national spokesperson, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. And we'll be speaking to trade union federation leaders, Zwelinzima Vavi, very shortly for a union response. So far, we've heard from the SACP supporting the president and again raising suspicions around the remedial action and the reports of the Public Protector saying that she should not be seen as a hired gun for politicians, basically one faction in the party. As expected, the president himself saying that he would like to take this on judicial review, and he believes that the report is fundamentally flawed, wrong in fact, wrong in law, irrational, a whole lot of things, but saying he does respect the office of the Public Protector. All right, Zwelinzima Vavi, head of SAFTU, the Trade Union Federation, is on the line. Zwelinzima, thank you very much. What's your response to the announcement tonight?
Well, I must say that the fact that the president didn't attack the Public Protector, either personally or the office of the Public Protector, instead go on, or he went on to affirm his position that is fully respecting that office, was something that is commendable. That was quite presidential, and I like that. And I wish that more of public representatives will start there when they make whatever statements that they wish to record. Secondly, the statement was more like to inform the public that the president is exercising his right to approach the court because he believes that the report is flawed, and the president have a right to do so. And whenever there is a dispute on the material issues about the facts that have been gathered, the court must be the arbiter. And in this case, the courts will have to be the final arbiter. We listened very carefully to the public protector on Friday. Today we listened to the president. And we think that the matter must go to the court and in an expedited fashion so that the country can put this thing behind us and we move forward in addressing the crisis that South Africa is facing.
You say you respect him for the way he handled the person of the public protector. The SACP has been very different, using the word, the term, hired gun in relation to the public protector. Do you have any specific opinion on her reports, her behavior thus far?
The point that we have insisted on as SAFTU is this, that the public protector is a Chapter 9 institution. It doesn't matter what is our opinion about her or about her findings, her competency. The first thing that we must always insist on, we don't want to go back to the era where the public protector was subjected to a random, irrational attack by the people. We have something to hide. And we've learned very hard, in the hard way, that we must at all times ensure that the public protector's office is respected and it is protected. And unless, of course, we have something to hide in the process. The second part is that when the public protector makes a finding that you don't like, the court are your next avenue for you to say, I've been wronged here by the public protector, because the public protector is not above the law. But once you start a campaign to attack her office, to demean her personality, and to undermine the authority she has as a Chapter 9 institution, we in SAFTU will definitely have a problem with that. The Constitution allows the Parliament a right to recall the public protector if, in their view, she have compromised that office or he has compromised the office, that is no longer acting in a manner that protects the dignity of that office. She is incompetent and or she has a malice, and that she's driven by political agendas. If people have that type of evidence, they are free to go to court, not only to go to court, but to go to Parliament and present to the country the reason why they feel that she have acted outside the mandate. But it can't be that every time she issues a report that we don't like, we then say she must be recalled. It can't be every time that she says something negative against some people we like, then we will try to say, no, she's not okay, she must be recalled and all of that. That's just completely wrong.
Finally, Mr. Bavi, I'm sure you'll agree that given where the economy is right now, given high unemployment, given the state of play for workers, the President has important work to do. Do you agree with his statement that he can remain focused, that he won't be distracted by this?
Yes. But that doesn't mean that the public protector have no right to investigate complaints from the public. There is a complaint. The complaint originally is that the President misled Parliament, lied to the legislature when she was answering a question from the leader of the opposition, Mkhwebane. That's a fact here, not whether the President is busy and will be distracted or not. The President is not above the law. The public protector is not above the law. Not a single South African must be seen to be above the law. If you have issue to answer, you have to answer any matter that comes from Parliament or that comes from the ordinary members of the public. And the issue of unemployment and poverty inequalities have been with us for the past 25 years. It can't be that every time people exercise their rights they have in the Constitution, such as Mkhwebane chose to exercise, then we are being reminded that the president is doing important work elsewhere for the country. That's wrong.
All right. Thank you very much, SAFTU Secretary General Zwelinzima Vavi. On the line, we take a short break and we'll continue our coverage, bringing you all the analysis and political reaction of following the announcement of the president tonight that he will be taking that public protector report on judicial review.